Yo, what is up, y'all? My name is Robert Donaldson, and welcome back to another edition of Rob's Best Bets. And we are once again talking about college hoops, and we are talking about this fine Saturday slate. I am so excited for this. This is the best slate of the entire year, in my opinion, so far in this sport. Just so many great matchups, whether it's at the high major level or at the mid-major level. And, you know, coming off a Friday, coming off Thursday, we're really having a fantastic week right now. And if you guys did watch the end of that Princeton game, when they were up, 20 points late in the second half, and then failing to cover 8.5 points because of free throws and a lot of questionable calls down the stretch, I know you're upset, especially when simultaneously we had Cornell moneyline plus 400, and it was so alive. They were up 20 points early, and that one also kind of fell through the cracks late. But hey, another great winning night for us, and we'll take those every single day of the week. But before we jump into the picks for Saturday here, we do need to take a second to shout out today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. And if you aren't already following me over on Twitter/X at RobDFB, make sure you go over there and do so, because with Underdog, we love to do the pick'em entries, and I'm going to have two different slips for tomorrow. They're going to be both 6-to-1 pairs, and if you guys want to take part, make sure you are going over to Underdog and signing up using promo code RobDFB, and that'll snag you guys a pretty sweet deposit match bonus. But with all that being said, y'all, I am so jacked to talk about these Saturday plays. All right, first up, we are heading out to the CAA, where we have Charleston taking on Drexel, and this is a really fun matchup because these are two programs that are constantly near the top of the CAA, and when you're looking at Drexel, they're a very up-and-down team. That's just kind of the nature of their program, but Charleston on the other side is the big brand, and one of the big dogs in this conference, if not the top dog in this conference, but they have been going through the woes as of late, and that's why I do think this line is sitting at a pick'em, and for that reason, I say we go ahead and take Drexel on the money line for 2 units for our first bet here on Saturday. For pick number 2, we are heading out to the Big Ten, where we have a fun matchup between Oregon and Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's having an awesome season, man. Greg Gard went from kind of being on a relative hot seat to having one of the best teams, if not the best team, we've seen from Wisconsin in over a decade. And that includes, those Frank Kaminsky-led bunches as well. But in this matchup, I do think we're getting to a point with Wisconsin that a lot of their betting lines are going to be a little bit inflated because of the success that they've been having. And on the other side, Oregon, they're a battle-tested team with a lot of big wins this year and a really fantastic head coach. And they're getting 8.5 points. I do think they keep it within that number. So let's go ahead and take those boatload of points for 3 units for our second bet here on Saturday. For pick number 3, we are heading out to the SEC, where we have one of the best games on the entire slate between Tennessee and Texas A&M. And Texas A&M is having a great year. Tennessee is having another great year under Rick Barnes. And in this particular matchup, you have two styles of ball that are very, very similar. Now, I do think that Texas A&M has a little bit more of that wild card edge because of who they have at their guard position, but at the same time, I do think that Rick Barnes and this Tennessee team is battle-tested enough to not really be fazed by a ruckus environment. And sometimes, as we've seen in a lot of these recent games, that ruckus environment and that home crowd that you have behind you can really end up suffocating you if you don't make shots early. And Tennessee has the ability to take A&M out of that game right from the jump. I say we go ahead and take those 2 points there for 3 units for our third bet here on Saturday. For pick number 4, we are heading back to the Big Ten, where we have a matchup between Penn State and Minnesota. And Penn State right now is kind of in a dire spot because if they lose another game, their season is officially over. They're going to miss out on the cut line for the Big Ten tournament. And in this matchup, this is a game that if Penn State is playing the right kind of ball, and last time out when we bet on them against Nebraska, they were, I do feel like you have to find a way to win this game, and they don't even need to win this game for our betting purposes. They're getting 2.5 points, so let's go ahead and take them for 2 units for our 4th bet here on Saturday. For pick number 5, we are heading down to the Big South, where we have High Point taking on Gardner-Webb, and Gardner-Webb have kind of been on a track of a lot of road games recently. 5 of their last 6 have all been road games, which is kind of a brutal stretch regardless of which conference you are playing in, and High Point on the other side has kind of been riding almost a little bit too high for my liking in this conference. This is a competitive league, and Gardner-Webb is no pushover, and I do think that because of recent success for High Point and the way that they've been coming about that success is leading to an inflated number here on the road, and I say we go ahead and take those 7.5 points with G-Dub for 2 units for our 5th bet here on Saturday. For pick number 6, we are heading back to the SEC, where we have Georgia taking on Auburn, and Auburn has been an absolute wagon, whether it's actually in terms of, real basketball and winning games, or, against the spread, where they've been covering a lot of games as well. And that's kind of what I think the theme of this video is going to be, because there are a lot of really great teams in college basketball that I wouldn't want to bet against just in terms of the outright winner. But eventually, when you are covering and winning simultaneously, you're going to be catching a lot of inflation in terms of your betting lines and the betting market just in general. And I do think that Georgia, I'm not in love with this team. I think they're kind of somewhat competent, but not really fully there yet under Mike White. And they have been fading down the stretch, but 17.5 points is a very, very hefty number in a game where it kind of feels like Auburn might be able to sleepwalk and still win. So let's go ahead and take those points for 2 units for our 6th bet here on Saturday. For pick number 7, we are heading down to the Big 12, where we have a game between Oklahoma State and our least favorite team in the entire country, Kansas. And oh my goodness, guys, last time out, when they were playing BYU, and I'm talking about Kansas here, I was saying that, this kind of feels like maybe rock bottom. This might be the lowest buy spot of the Bill Self era, and it just made too much sense to take them in Provo, Utah. And then they got clapped by 50. I mean, maybe not 50. I don't even know what the final score was. I turned it off at halftime because it was such a disastrous blowout. And, in this game here, oh my gosh, we're going back to it, guys. Because again, this is one of those things where they're so talented. They're so well coached. And for some reason, it hasn't come together in some of their games. And, against an Iowa State or, the first half of Baylor and also some of these other big spots, they have shown up. I mean, this team beat Duke, and everybody's picking Duke to be the national title champion this year. And, in this matchup against Oklahoma State, I've seen Oklahoma State shit the bed just as much as Kansas. So let's go ahead and lay the 14.5 points here. Let's eat a little bit of juice. I even like this up to 15.5 as well, but let's go ahead and bet it for 3 units for our 7th bet here on Saturday. For pick number 8, we are heading out to one of my favorite games of the entire slate, mid-major or not, and that's going to be in the A10 between George Mason and VCU. This is the game of the conference in this conference this season, and when you're looking at VCU, I think they are the best mid-major, and I'm including the Mountain West teams. I'm including a team like a Memphis, and listen, you can push back on me for all, for saying that, that's your prerogative, totally fine. I am welcome to that pushback, but VCU has impressed me unlike any other in the mid-major leagues, and George Mason has had a really great season, but I feel like this line is this high for a very good reason, and for that reason, I say we go ahead and lay the 9.5 points here with the VCU Rams for 3 units for our 8th pick here on Saturday. For pick number 9, we are heading back to the SEC, where we have another great matchup between Kentucky and Alabama. And Alabama has kind of been taking it on the chin as of late. And they've been putting up points in those games, but they just can't defend, and that's led to a lot of issues for them. But when you're coming off 2 losses like that, where the other team basically scores 100 on you both times, I do feel like it's a little bit of a wake-up call. And when you have a coach like a Nate Oates who's been here and seen this kind of trial and tribulation multiple times over throughout his coaching tenure, I do think they're going to be geared up and ready to go. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and lay the 9.5 points here with the Crimson Tide for 2 units for our 9th play here on Saturday. For pick number 10, we are heading out to a really fun game taking place in Madison Square Garden between Illinois and Duke. It's kind of one of those games that just doesn't feel, or feels maybe a little bit out of place in the conference schedule because, this is a non-con game and we're sitting here in late February, but I am very glad that the schedule makers made this thing happen. And when you're looking at Duke, I can count on one hand how many impressive wins they have picked up this season. So this is a very big game for them. And on the other side, Illinois has kind of played their way in a negative sense onto the bubble. And I do feel like this is another game that, they need to get up for and need to win. And so it really combines 2 fun angles here. And I do think that Illinois is a very capable team. I have a lot more questions actually about Duke than I do Illinois. I kind of know who Illinois is. And for that reason, 10.5 points just feels like so much, especially when I think Illinois actually could be live in this game. So let's go ahead and take those points for 4 units. And for an additional full unit, let's go ahead and bet the full game money line with Illinois here as well. For pick number 10, we are heading out to the Mountain West, where we have San Diego State taking on Utah State. And the last time these 2 teams played each other in San Diego State, man, they let one go. That was a game that they absolutely should have won down the stretch, and then they just kind of collapsed in on themselves in the final minutes. And Utah State has been great all season, but I do start to wonder with these types of teams whether or not they potentially peaked too soon in their season. And San Diego State is playing some really great ball. I think they're obviously going to be up for this game. It's hard not to be when you're around that Logan crowd. And for that reason, I say we take the 5.5 points here for 2 units for our 11th bet here on Saturday. For pick number 12, we are heading back to the SEC once again, where we have a really fun matchup between Missouri and Arkansas. And we've been bringing up the bubble a lot in this game. And Arkansas is another team that has found themselves onto the bubble after a really, really slow start to conference play. But this is a very talented team. And on the other side, Missouri is a team that we've been backing a lot this season. This is a team that I kind of felt like had an underrated resume, or at least an underrated ranking based on, the bracketology things coming out, because they had huge wins, in Gainesville, against Mississippi State, in Starkville. And then last time out, they beat Bama. And I think they're kind of almost riding at this point a little bit too high. And they do play that style of ball that can be very volatile. And if they're not making shots early, they could just shoot themselves out of this game. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and take Arkansas, getting the 1.5 points here for 4 units for our 12th bet here on Saturday. For pick number 13, we are once again heading out to a fantastic game between St. Mary's and Gonzaga. This one is in Spokane, and what we've seen over the years in Spokane, Washington, when Gonzaga is in a spot to avenge a recent loss in conference play, is it usually doesn't go well for that road team. And even though St. Mary's is a really good defensive team, and they do have some guys on that roster that I think could help them or propel them to make a run in March, I think this is a bad spot to catch Gonzaga, especially with Gonzaga actually needing to build up some wins late in the season here. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and lay the 5.5 points with the Zags for 3 units for our second to last bet here on Saturday. All right, for our final bet here on Saturday, we are heading back to the SEC once again, where we have a really fun matchup between Texas and South Carolina. And you might be saying, Rob, what makes this really fun? And from my perspective, it's the pride element. It's a human element. It's the fact that South Carolina is over in conference play after having a dream season. And I do think that in these types of spots, you see those desperate teams and just those teams battling for pride. And there's something really fun to me about that, especially in the college level, because you don't really see that. You don't see that level of desperation of, guys playing their final games of their careers potentially and what comes out emotionally. And I do think here at home against Texas, this is a viable opponent to pick up a win against. I think that South Carolina feels the same. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and take those 3.5 points for 2 units for our final bet here on Saturday. All that being said, I really want to thank you guys for checking out today's video. And if you do want to show some love, make sure you drop a like on the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and make sure you comment down below. But with all that being said, y'all, I will see you in a future video. Take it easy.